So we're bringing on our second guest, who's Denise Billings, and she has an exciting still photo. And her memoir is called Road Trip, and she's joining us tonight from where are you joining us from, Denise? Oh, unmute your mic.
North Hollywood, California.
Oh, okay, North Hollywood, California. So you're 2 hours behind me, 3 hours behind Rhonda. And so, but we'll welcome you to the show. And can you put your book cover a little closer to the screen? Because I think I like the way it looks. I think it's a neat book cover.
I think that's as close as I can get it.
Oh, is it stuck to something? Well, do you have your book here? So those are pictures of you, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's a picture of me.
Okay. On the front. And you have tabs there. Were those places where you do readings?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, if you're gonna do a reading.
Not today, but
Not today,
I'm gonna do one at my book launch that's coming up Sunday.
Right. Congratulations. So are the photos on the cover, those are photos that you actually took yourself or photos from your family?
Yeah, they're photos I actually took. These two are pictures I actually took. Yeah. And that's the car I rode across country in.
No, the little Beetle.
A VW Bug. From St. Louis to Los Angeles.
Bug back in the 70s.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody had a Bug back in those days.
And the trunk is in the front.
Yes, the trunk
is engine is in the back.
And this is what I looked like when I first got here. That's the baby me.
Okay, baby you. Hey, baby me.
Yeah.
Okay.
26, something like that. No, 20, 23, 22.
Well, tell us about Road Trip. Why did you decide to write this book? What are you actually focusing on? Is this a specific trip, or is this different times where you've taken road trips that you wanted to bring all together?
Well, it's actually two road trips. The first one there in 1978, when I drove from St. Louis to Los Angeles. And then the second trip, some 30 years later, I took a road trip with my husband and we rode from Los Angeles to St. Louis. So I thought I would write about the life in between, because I had blogged about these two trips, and once I decided to write a book, I was like, yeah, okay, I think that's going to be the segment of my life that I want to talk about.
Now, when you took that first road trip to St. Louis, from St. Louis to California, were you by yourself?
Yes, I was. I was all by myself.
I tell people the 20s are the decade of adventure.
Yes.
The 20s, because when I was 24, I drove from DC to Houston by myself. I would never even consider doing anything like that. But we do some, but we didn't, you don't have fears and you're not scared. Right. You just go
we think we can do it all when we're young.
Right? I had no fear. I should have been afraid.
You should have been scared. That's what I said. I should have been scared. And then
it's not so much the fear. I think about being tired. So when you're driving that far, did you take breaks? Did you go all the way through? Did you stop and spend the night in the hotel? How did you plan this trip?
I planned to drive until it got dark and then find some place to stay. And so that's what I did it took 5 nights. And the last night I called he was my soon to be third husband or something like that. But I called him to let him know that I was pulling in and I would be there tomorrow. But I was so close that he said, no, just keep driving, keep driving. It's only another hour to go and I will be there. But all the other nights I stopped, slept, and got back up in the morning and hit the road.
But I don't know about you, but for me, the longest part of the trip is when you're less than an hour away from your destination.
When you're almost there.
It seems like forever to get there.
Yes, and I didn't get lost at all the whole trip until that last hour when it was trying to come into LA, and it's all of these different freeways with different numbers and different names. And I was just like, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just gonna pick that road that says Los Angeles, because they had all
Yeah, and it wasn't in the GPS. So
no GPS.
Yeah, I know when
guy.
when I did it, I stopped once. I drove from sunrise to sunset. I stopped in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, at a
Wow.
hotel. And then I got up at dawn the next day and I got to Houston by more or less by dark. But then my AC went out on my car, and this was in July, and in Houston, it's sweltering. It went out like when I was halfway between Alabama and Houston. But anyway, so it's just things that happen on road trips when you're young and you do things, and it's adventure,
It's an adventure, and that's what most of the book is about, the adventure I had in those early years of life when I was just out there doing stuff that was questionable.
Well, sometimes the mistakes we make are tied to a love interest, and it sounds like yours was, mine was too, but that's as far as I'll go with it.
It's some questionable characters along the way, and do you talk about them in your book as well?
Yes, I talk about the questionable choices I made in men,
Mm.
and that various and sundry love interests, because that trip was to go and live with a guy, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna live with you until I get a job. And then that's what I should have done, but I didn't do that. That didn't happen. More happened. We eventually I got pregnant, and then we got married, and then we got divorced, and then yeah. But a lot of my trips, I made some more trips, and they were involving love interests and questionable choices.
Yeah, that's how I got to Houston.
Yeah,
I'm not from Texas.
But they're running after a man.
Well, no, it was. Well, we were supposed to get married, and we did get married, and then we got divorced. So I didn't. But that was how I got
the only one. I'm not the only one.
Not at all.
We all make questionable choices.
We
in the name
do.
of love.
We do. And when I talk to young women and they say, well, they're going to make a change geographically because of some person, I said, what you need to do is you need to have your own plan for what you're going to do once you move, and not have it centered around him, because that may or may not last.
Yeah.
Right.
It's very likely that it won't.
It won't, but you don't want to discourage them,
Yeah.
You don't want to be too negative, because then people reject what you're saying in total. But now somebody said that Tony Bonita said at 21 she drove from Birmingham to California. So,
it was a bunch of us on the road. It was a bunch of us on the road.
Yeah, that's something that people do. But it's good to have that out there.
I barely want to drive to Virginia, and that's only about an hour away, depending on traffic.
Well, that's because you all have so much traffic. But I like road trips, like extended, where I'm on the road and I'm out on the highway, and it's not near a big city. I'm not
outside of the city traffic. Outside of the city traffic,
right? Where you get to see scenery, and it's only a few cars on the interstate, and you can take your time and not be stressed. But when you go through the city, that's where the stress comes, and Atlanta is the worst, I think, because there's really no way to get around Atlanta and through there if you're going north or south that way. If you, I've tried going around Atlanta, but it's just takes too long. You have to go too far out of the way. So you just have to bite the bullet. So tell us about, and I like that you did a memoir that had 2 specific points in your life as the anchors for the story. So you don't start with, I was born, whatever.
I was born a poor Black child. No. No, I didn't go there. But I do
of a sharecropper.
Right, I didn't take you there. But it just came naturally as I began to learn how to write and start working with the writers workshop that I belong to, the Longwood Writers Workshop. Shout out to Longwood. It felt so natural to just, this was the full arc of the story.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, this road trip was so different from the other road trip. I was crazy and hungry and tired and all that stuff, and driving through snowstorms where I couldn't see and scared in the night. My mother, I had this canopy bed, and I had grown out of it. And when I left home for this trip, I was finished with college. I was out of college a couple of years, but my mother still had the posts from that canopy bed. So when I told her I was getting ready to go, she said, "Here, take this, and this will be your protection." Because I was like, what do I need this for? It's for protection. So if something happened to me, I was going to take that bedpost and crack somebody upside the head. That was but I still I didn't understand why she thought I needed that. But yeah, of course I needed a young woman out on the road by herself.
Right.
Yeah. I didn't tell my parents I did it. They would have been, they would have.
My mother gave me some chicken and hit the road.
But I didn't, I lived in a different city, so that I didn't.
Oh, so you didn't leave
tell them at the time.
there. Yeah.
I told them that after, like, years later.
Mm-hmm.
Not at the time.
Because they would have tried to stop you.
Yes, they would have tried to change our mind and say, that's nuts, which it really was. But
yeah.
you don't want to listen at that. It's the decade of adventure. The 20s are the decade of adventure. If you can make it through there without like making like huge mistakes that are life altering,
without killing yourself or
right,
up in jail,
right, then you really do learn from it, and you can look back on some things and say, there before the grace of God go I. Thank God was looking out for you.
Road trips?
Say again.
You still like taking road trips? Do you still want to jump in the car and drive?
I still like to drive. I do still like to drive. And that's when I learned that I liked to drive on that road trip, that first road trip. But now, you have to take too much stuff because I'm old. You guys are still young, but I got to take medication. I got to take, 2 or 3 pair of glasses. It's too much to pack to take a road trip now. It's just too much.
Well, I can't wait to go on another one. We're hoping to go on one next summer. A couple of summers ago, my husband, my sister, and her husband went on a road trip from here to California. And we took I-10 going west, and we took I-40 coming back east. And it was just beautiful. That's what I like about road trips. When you get out away from the city, you get to see the natural topography in the area. And that Arizona, New Mexico, that California, it's some amazing scenery. It's just,
that's where we went through on that trip back. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was so much different because we had a nice big Cadillac SUV. I had the husband with me who knows how to read a map and has a sense of direction. And I took big stuff, like I had a copier printer I wanted to take to my niece. I had some artwork I wanted to take to my other niece. And so we couldn't take all that stuff on an airplane, but we could pack it all in that Cadillac. and that was a good road trip,
Yeah.
except for the part when I was coming back, and when we were coming back, and we were in some white state. I forget where we were, but it was a big ruddy uh highway patrolman who pulled me over because he said I didn't signal, because we were going through this thing where the trucks have the toll booth. We went through the toll booth, and
Okay.
and so as we were leaving the toll booth, I just swooped across 4 lanes because we were the only ones there. We were the only ones there. And so, oh no, he stopped me, he pulled me up, he flashed the lights, he did all the works. And I was so scared. I said, Earl, my husband, I was like, we're gonna go to jail. And I forget where we were, a white state. I forget where we were.
Idaho. No,
It was white.
that's one of them.
New Mexico. So
no, New Mexico has a lot of native people.
But I forgot. But he made me get out of the car.
Oh.
He made me go and get in his big old SUV, police SUV, with a big old big German Shepherd in the back seat behind the black mesh wire, and he did dog. He's going dog doing that, and he got me in that car, and I was so scared. I was trying to look him in the eye so he would know that I'm telling the truth on all of these questions. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And then he asked me to make and model of the car, and I was like, I don't know. I don't know. I just drive it. I put that's all I know. And he was so disgusted with me. But I was just so then he went back, got out the car, went and talked to my husband. He's like, she don't know the make and model. And my husband said, well, are you married? He was like, yeah, I got a wife. She don't know that car stuff either. Thank you. So and he told him to make and model. And so, and that was the one time I was okay with men talking down about women at that time. Because if it meant I could get away and go home, please let me just.
I could just see you now talk about what you mean, women this and women that. Next thing you know, both of y'all going to jail because you're arguing with each other.
Right.
Well, he found a commonality to take the edge off of the situation.
Yeah, so I had protection on that trip. That first trip, no, not so much. That's going the other way. I had protection.
Yeah. So, tell us about some of the, not to give the whole book away, but tell us about some of the flashpoints in Road Trip.
Well, I like to say that it's a story for Black women, but it's also a universal story. All women go through stuff, leaving town, moving, getting new jobs. All women go through not all, but some women have to endure physical violence. Some women have to endure verbal abuse and psychological abuse. And so my husband is my fourth and final husband. And I had a whole bunch of boyfriends and husbands and stuff in between. And each one I had to learn from of what I didn't want in a relationship. So one flashpoint was the drug abuse and the physical abuse that I endured and how I got through that. Another flashpoint was my own drug use. I didn't become an addict, but I was out there wilding out in my 20s and early 30s. And I came to a point where I was like, I have got to stop this. I have got to stop this. I was getting high and smoking some crack with people I didn't even know. And my baby son was in the front room, and he could have just walked out into the traffic and I wouldn't have even known.
Was this a realization that you came up with on your own, or was there some type of defining moment that made you realize that you needed to make a change?
That moment when because I was coming down from that crack high. That moment when I realized that my baby was in danger, and at the time I didn't even care. That moment when I did begin to care, and I snatched up my baby and left them people who probably didn't even miss me. And that's when it turned around for me. But at that time, my husband at that time, he didn't make it. He couldn't turn around, and he went all the way down, and that led to the physical abuse. And so those are some big flashpoints for me.
And you also mentioned murder as one of the things that you experienced along the way.
Yeah, my father was a police officer, and he was murdered on the job. He was killed in the line of duty.
Oh.
And so that was a very heartbreaking moment for me, because
Wow.
we had just repaired, it wasn't even repaired. We had just gotten close again. And
Okay. How old were you when he was murdered?
I was 26, 27. Yeah.
Okay.
So I had just taken my baby son to St. Louis, another road trip to St. Louis, but we flew that time. And so introduced my son, my baby son. I had gotten divorced and all that. He was just like a year old. And I took him back to St. Louis to meet my St. Louis family. So he got to meet my father. And that was lucky. He and my mother were divorced. So it was so much fun to see my mother and father in the same room. I hadn't seen that since I was 9. And so they were together, and he got to meet him. And then just a few months later, 4 months later, my father was killed. He was killed in the line of duty. He was shot point blank range in the chest. And it still hurts. It took a long time for me to not just burst out crying every time I talked about it.
Yeah, that's a shocking, death is always
I don't think
shocking,
that is anything that you
that-
easily get.
No, something like that, where it's not an illness or something like that, where
because he was 47 years old, so I'm way older than he ever got to be.
Right. So Tony Benita said again, she commented before about the road trip. She said she understands because she's on husband number 3. So at least, you continue to believe in love, because sometimes when you have negative experiences with men, some people, it scars them for life.
They get jaded when it comes to love.
Yes. So they just lose all their trust. And
well, I kept trying.
You figure if at first you don't succeed, try again.
Because the other 3 marriages, none of them lasted a year. But this one, we're rolling into 28 years together. So
okay.
I think it's gonna last.
I have a friend that was married. She's been married 3 times. The first 2 were like you, they didn't last a year. But I think she's been married now 6 or 7 years, and she met her husband on one of those dating sites. Wow. I think Plenty of Fish. I don't know if that one's still around.
Wow.
But that's what she
You can meet some nice people online. I mean, you still have to do the same vetting process you do.
Due diligence.
Yeah.
But if you meet someone who has common interests and they're not telling lies, what they're saying is actually true.
Right? Yeah.
And you have common interests, some common values, they could work.
So, Ms. Denise, now today is the 13th. Your official publication date, release date, is the 19th.
Yes.
And you have a book launch. You mentioned earlier that you have a book launch coming up.
Yes, it's on the 18th, which is our anniversary, as a matter of fact. our wedding anniversary. It's on the 18th. It's at Waco Theater Center in North Hollywood. And it's from 2 to 6 p.m. I'm gonna have my one of my writing partners read an excerpt. I'm gonna have my best friend who's in the book. She came from St. Louis, a road trip, to out here to read for me, read an excerpt, and just to be with me and experience all of this wonderfulness. And Marcia, that's you, girl. And I'm gonna read something. And my teacher, my writing teacher, Denise Nicholas, she is a force to be reckoned with. And
Okay.
she and she's supporting me enough to she's gonna come and talk a little bit. And so it's gonna be a good deal. My son is gonna be the photographer. My son, I say that he's in the book. He didn't ask to be in the book, but he's in the book because it's all about a lot about his father. And he told me, because I was nervous about him reading the book, he told me that next time somebody asked him, why are you like this? He says, I'm just going to hand them the book. This is why. I was like, okay, just make sure they buy the book. Okay, make sure they buy the book. This is why I'm messed up. This is why I'm so messed up.
I will say it takes a lot of courage to strip this bare and tell your story, knowing that your loved ones who didn't know this about you prior are going to read it. So, I mean, was this a conversation that you had with your family prior to releasing? So they just go ahead and be surprised.
I didn't. They're gonna be a little surprised. And the only two I worried about was my husband and my son. But my teacher, she said, you got to put it on the page. You got to put it on the page. Otherwise, why tell the story? You got to put it all out there. So my husband took a trip to Atlanta last month, and he had not read the book, and he read the book while he was on his trip, and he called me and he said, I'm reading the book, and I'm gonna have some questions for you when I get home, because you didn't tell me the whole story. I was like, yeah, boo, yeah. But both of them are okay. And that's
good.
all that I was really concerned about.
That's
yeah.
Well, Miss Denise, it was a pleasure talking with you. Congratulations on your new book. And best wishes on your book launch. I hope that you get to sell as many as you want to. So we did put the link to your website in the chat.
Thank you.
So people can go and support this book.
Thank you. And I appreciate what you guys do for new Black authors in particular, because I was floating around out there trying to figure out what to do next too, because writing the book is the easy part. This promotional part is no joke. And when they say self-published, they mean self. You doing all of the self stuff yourself.
Yeah.
So I appreciate what you do. It was very, very helpful for me.
Thank you. And it was wonderful talking with you.
Thank you.
Right. Oh, okay. Well, have a great evening.
Thank you. You too.